Hello everyone, I'm Mrs Batten and I'm currently the teacher in nursery, and I'm also the phonics and spelling lead across the school. I have previously taught reception for the last 4 years, and so I'm going to be explaining today a little bit about phonics because it's changed quite a lot since you and I went to school, and how you can support your children with the reading and writing, but initially the phonics for reading. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview about how we teach phonics in school and what phonics is, and do a bit of jargon busting because it's lots of strange words, and then I will go through with you the structure of the lesson, and then we will have some children come in and I will teach a lesson so that you can see everything that I've talked about actually in front of you. So in the first 3 to 6 weeks of reception, children are still revising the phonics that they've had previous experience of in the nursery, which is what we call phase 1. So phonics is taught in phases. There are 6 phases. Phase 1 is all about acclimatising to sound and hearing and distinguishing between different sounds all around you. So for example, being able to tell that the phone's ringing or the doorbell's ringing, or hearing different animal noises and knowing which animal makes which noise. Also beginning to hear when we have alliterative phrases. So for example, Big Ben bounced a bouncy ball. Being able to identify that all of the words in that sentence began with the sound B. Also thinking about rhyme. So nursery rhyme plays a really key part in phase 1 and continuing through phase 2, so that children can build up a repertoire of nursery rhymes and songs that have rhyming words in them, so that when they come to identify words with similar sounds, then they've already got a background in rhyme. Okay, we follow the London Borough of Tower Hamlets scheme for phonics, but it's also based on a government document called Letters and Sounds. It's a proven method of learning to read based on the sounds that the letters make. So we don't learn in alphabetical order, we learn them in sound order, where the sounds that are most commonly used to make the largest variety of words, which you will often find is, we call it SAT-PIN, so it's the S-A-T-P-I-N are the first 6 sounds, unless your school is following a different scheme and then the order is slightly different. So let's bust some jargon. A phoneme. Phoneme means sound, and this could be the sound that a single letter makes, or the sound that 2 letters or more than 2 letters make together, and I'll give you some examples later on. A grapheme is the name given to the written form, so the letter name, so A for example. GPC, which you may see on websites or hear about when you're supporting your child, means grapheme phoneme correspondence, and that means being able to see the written letter A and knowing that the phoneme is A, or hearing the phoneme A and being able to write the letter A. A digraph. A digraph is the word we use to describe when 2 letters go together to make one sound, such as sh, sh, ch, ch, ng, k, ck. And also the long vowel sounds such as a, e, I, o, u. A trigraph is 3 letters that go together to make one sound, such as I in sight or fright, or in bore, so O-R-E, air as in fair, ear as in dear, and air again as in dare, so A-R-E as well as A-I-R. What we call oral blending and segmenting is sounding out the sounds in words and then blending them together again to make a word. So the segmenting part means just separating, like if you think about an orange, we call those pieces of an orange segments. So it's separating out the sounds in a word so that you can hear each individual sound, which helps particularly with writing. But if they're reading a word that they don't know, and they can look at the grapheme, so the written letter, they can make the sound that that letter makes, and then they can try and blend those sounds together to make the word. And therefore blending is the putting together of the sounds, and we do it in both ways for the children. Sometimes we'll say a word, for example cat, and we'll tell the children to segment the sounds, so then we expect to hear them saying k, a, t. Sometimes we might say, I can see a k, a, t. So we've already segmented the sounds. We want the children to be able to hear those and blend them back together again to make the word cat. Some words we can't sound out, good old tricky English language. There are some words like was that sound like it's got an O and a Z, but as we know it's an A and an S. And words like the. These words are common exception words. So they're common because they come up a lot, and we also call them sight words or high frequency words. But they are often referred to as tricky words as well because you can't actually sound them out. In reception there are 45 of these. However, not all of them are tricky. They're all sight words and they all need to be learned by sight. So by the end of reception, hopefully your children will be able to read those 45 words and hopefully be able to spell them as well in their writing, because the majority of them can be sounded out phonetically. Just the ones that can't be sounded out phonetically, like I've already said, the, he, is, was, they need to be learnt so that they know how to spell them. The 26 letters that we have make 44 sounds, so those letters work really hard, and that's why phonics is really important for helping children learn how to read and write. Okay, I'm going to explain now the daily lesson. It comprises 5 parts, and we base it on the document I showed you earlier, Letters and Sounds, and on the planning given to us by the local authority. The first part is called the Revise section, and that is the oral blending and segmenting. So at the beginning of reception it will be revision of the phase 1 exploring sounds that they've been doing in the nursery and for the first few weeks of reception, where they are playing around with the sounds, listening to rhymes, working out which is the odd one out, listening to words with the same sound, and all of those things I've already explained. So we will use a puppet, which I'll show you later, and if those of you have been talking to Mrs Kinchley and she's told you to look up Fred Talk, that's what that is. It's where we use a puppet, because obviously it appeals to children, to sound out, segment the words and encourage the children to help the puppet to blend them together and say the word. So we do that at the first part of the lesson with a few picture cards or word cards or with the puppet, and then we move on to the Hear section, where we introduce the focus sound of that day. So for example, if it was the letter A that we're focusing on, we would show some pictures all beginning with A. So we might show an ant, an apple, an ambulance, an astronaut, an axe. And we would say those words first and then encourage the children to say them afterwards, using the term I say, you say. So I would say ant, and then the children would say ant. And we do it at quite a pace so that they can hear that sound repeatedly. Then we go through it again and we really emphasise that sound. So we'll say ant, and the child will say ant, and then I will say ambulance, and the children will say ambulance. And then we move on to the Read section, where the children are shown the letter, so the grapheme. They're shown the letter A, And then we turn them round so they can see the picture as well. And if you can see behind me, we've got a little chart here. That's our phoneme chart. And you can see that there are pictures on some of them and the written letter without a picture. So when we show the children the written letter on its own, just the grapheme, we want them to say the letter name. So we want them to say A. When we show them the card with the picture on it, we want them to say the sound A. We also use a little bit of another scheme that's very, very popular in this country, which also uses a rhyme or a mnemonic to help the children learn. So on the bottom of the cards, I'll show you this card that I'm talking about here. So that's our grapheme, that's A, this is A. And at the bottom there's a little rhyme to help the children remember, and it says apple. And when we teach them how to write it, we say round the apple and down the leaf. But because we are a cursive writing school and we are teaching the children cursive writing, we add on a little bit at the beginning of our handwriting section where we explain that we need to climb on, or we start on the line and go up. So our letters will all start here and then we'll climb on, or we'll start on the line and go up, and then we'll go around the apple and down the stalk. So those little rhymes help the children to remember the letters and the sounds. Once phase 2 is completed, we have a few days of assessing the children, just checking which sounds they recognise, and then we just missed out. Sorry everybody, missed out a section. I thought it didn't make sense. Section 4 is the write section. I got a bit ahead of myself because I was modelling it on here. So when we tell the children how to write the letter, we will explain to them where to start, and we will model it to them, and we will get them to do it on their hand. So we will say start on the line, go up, around the apple and down the stalk, and then we'll model it in the air. So we will say start on the line, go up the apple and round the apple and down the stalk. And we want to encourage the children to use the correct terminology for those entry and exit strokes as well. So where they start the letter is called an entry stroke, and where the letter ends is called an exit stroke. And we sometimes say a kick, just when we're teaching the children, and then kick out to finish, just to remind them, and obviously they remember things like that. As I said, we're following the cursive handwriting style. So this is an example of all of the letters. I will put this PowerPoint online so that you can refer to it, and obviously you won't have my mistake in the middle. So if you need to have an example of our handwriting, you can, but I know Mrs Daniels in her homework, she's been sending out the model of handwriting. The final part of the phonics lesson, section 5, is the apply section. So this is where we want the children to apply all of the information that they've just learned in the lesson. So either by reading or writing some words. So the teacher may sound out some words and then expect the children to blend them together and then write them down. Or the teacher may just give a word and expect the children to try and write it down, but to be orally still segmenting. We also encourage the use of phoneme fingers, so we split the word into the sound. So for example, if it was cat again, we would say k, a, t, cat, and that action is just that we're blending it together and it makes the word cat. So the first sound, or the initial sound, is k, the middle sound a, the final sound t, cat. And after sounding out a word, always blend it back together again so that the children understand that's why we're segmenting. We also go through some of those tricky words I was telling you about as well at the end of a phonics lesson, and we flash them up to the children to read. We also have flashcards that make up words using the sounds that we've learned, once we've learned enough sounds to start making words. So for example, once we've learned the SATPIN, we can make words like sat, pat, tin, pin, and then the children can start sounding those words out, and they immediately start feeling a sense of success because they're already starting to read. And the books you will have noticed that have been coming home, and the books on Bug Club, are all phonetically decodable books, which means the children can have a look at the words and they can start sounding out the sounds of the letters, and then they can blend it together and make the word, and then they can start reading. And it means that they have a sense of success really early on with their reading, which is wonderful. So once that's finished, we do a little assessment to make sure the children are secure in phase 2 before we move on to phase 3, which is the last few less common sounds, like the Z and the W and the X, and then we start moving on to the digraphs, so ch, sh, and then once they've and then after that it starts to become what we call the long vowel sounds, so the AI for rain and the double E for sweet, both of the double O sounds, the U and the oo, for boot or book. And the phases carry on like that until phase 6, which some children may get to in year 2. Some children may still need to be revising some of phase 5 and phase 6 when they are in year 3, and particularly now at this time of year with everything that's happened and the gaps in learning. I've put on my PowerPoint some useful websites to assist with phonics and helping you to support your child. So you will have that. I think Mrs Daniels has already pointed you in the direction of Mr Thorne. He is a really good teacher. He's from our country, so he speaks with an English accent and pronounces the phonics correctly. So if you're not sure about how to say a sound with your child, or if your child is pronouncing it correctly, then just into Google or YouTube and look up Mr Thorne does phonics, and then at the end of that just add the letter that you're looking for. Another one is www.theschoolrun.com, which explains a lot of those words and terminology that I've explained to you already, but if you're still not sure, then that explains it for you. And then a couple of interactive websites to help your children practice and play around with phonics, Phonics Play and Phonics Bloom. Okay, thank you for listening. I'm going to go and get the children in a moment. I'm just going to show, before I get the children and model that lesson that I've just gone through with you, I'm just going to show you a couple of activities that we sometimes do with the children that you might be able to recreate at home using some of their toys or bits of clothing, for example a sock, because you can sound out sock quite easily, sock. Or you can ask them to hang their coat on their egg, and they've got to realise that you're saying peg. So I'm just going to grab some of those and I'll be back shortly. Okay, so one of the games we play with the children is silly soup. So we get a bowl or a saucepan. I'm sure everyone's got a bowl or a saucepan lying around at home. I happen to have a cauldron at the moment because we had that left over from Halloween. And we sing a little song, and it goes like this. I'm making lots of silly soup. I'm making soup that's silly. I'm going to put it in the fridge to keep it nice and chilly. In goes, and then you put something in your soup. So I'm going to put a bat in my soup. And I tell the children that this soup is at soup. And I need to only put ingredients in my soup that rhyme with at. So it's at soup and I have a bat. So then I sing the rhyme again. And then I have a look at a selection of objects and encourage the children to come and pick out the ones that rhyme. So make sure that you've got some that don't. So then I would go through, I've got a rat, so into my silly soup, I've got a bat, and now I've got a rat. And I overemphasize all of the words. So we do that until we've got several at words in our soup, and we keep singing the rhyme in between each one. The children love that one. This is Fred. He's our crocodile puppet, and Fred talks to the children in Fred Talks. So Fred will tell the children that he wants to go outside and Oh, what does Fred want to do? What could that be? Run, run, run. Oh, you want to run? And Fred says yes, he wants to run. So Fred will sound out some words in Fred talk. Sometimes it's referred to as robot talk. It's basically the segmenting. So he's segmenting the sounds in the words, and your children need to put them back together. So let's just try another one. What else would you like to do outside, Fred? You'd like to hop. He'd like to hop. Hop. Fred wants to hop. Okay. And you might do it in reverse. You might say, Fred, do you want to hop? Hop. Yes, hop. Hop. And encourage the children to tell you what the different sounds are and blend it together and make a word. You could also play I Spy. Now, when I was younger, we used to say I Spy with my little eye, something beginning with A or something beginning with T. But now I would encourage you to do it with the sound, and be very careful with words that begin with a letter. For example, giraffe, that's one that's really a tricky one. It obviously begins with a G, but it makes the soft G sound like a J. So don't say I spy with my little eye something beginning with G, and then expect the children to find a giraffe, because it doesn't begin with G, it begins with J. So try and keep it simple. So I spy with my little eye something beginning with B. So it might be a ball or a book. Car, cake, doll. The other thing to point out that I forgot to say earlier on is that the sounds are very different to when we learnt them. We use our voice for some of them, and we just use our breath for other sounds. So we need to be really clear when we tell the children which way we're forming those words. So for example, T, the letter T is T, T, and I just use my breath. It's not T with that sound on the end, and we make a bit of a joke about it with the children, and we say no, we don't want on the end of our words. We just want to hear the breath. Same with S, S, not S. Same with C or K, K, not K, K, K. And that's where Mr. Thorne does phonics that I recommended earlier on. That's where his website comes in really helpful. If you have any other questions about phonics, obviously speak to Mrs. Daniels, or you can speak to me if I'm available. I'm happy to have a chat with you virtually if you need some further advice and help with phonics and spelling. Thank you.